In July 1497, 4 wooden ships left the port of Lisbon, attempting a journey that no European had ever completed. This small fleet carried the weight of a desperate continent. At the time, the legendary wealth of India, its peppercorns, silks, and precious stones, was physically cut off from Europe by thousands of miles of hostile geography. Every gram of spice that reached the West had to pass through an overland gauntlet. Goods were taxed at every gate and controlled by middlemen who dictated the price, leaving Europe at the end of a long and expensive supply chain. Breaking this monopoly required a way to circumvent the land entirely. The survival of the Portuguese economy depended on finding a direct maritime link to the east. The only alternative was the open ocean. But to the sailors of the 15th century, the waters south of the African coast represented a terrifying, unmapped void. This map illustrates the limits of their world. Notice how the southern tip of Africa appears as an impenetrable barrier, blocking passage to the Indian Ocean. Gama was ordered to sail past this edge, a near-suicidal sprint into the unknown, to prove a route existed. Portugal was betting its treasury on a single navigator's ability to find a way through the blank spaces on the map. At the Cape of Good Hope, the crew encountered the planet's most violent maritime conditions. This is where the Atlantic and Indian Oceans collide, creating massive swells that could snap a caravel's mast in seconds. Within months, the crew's bodies began to fail. Scurvy rotted their gums and opened old wounds, leaving the men too weak to even handle the sails. With no land in sight and the death toll rising, the fleet teetered on the edge of mutiny. The sailors were trapped in a floating prison, surrounded by an abyss that seemed to have no end. The ocean acted as a lethal filter, designed to destroy any ship attempting to bridge the distance between the two hemispheres. In the face of starvation and the constant threat of a violent takeover by his own men, Gama's resolve remained absolute. He refused every demand to turn the ships back toward home. After nearly a year at sea, the gamble paid off. In May of 1498, the battered remnants of the fleet finally dropped anchor in the bustling harbor of Calicut, India. Through sheer physical endurance, the maritime barrier between the East and the West had been broken. Arriving in Calicut changed the rules of global commerce overnight. The Portuguese had successfully bypassed the gatekeepers of the overland routes. As seen on this map, the Indian coast was a theater of massive wealth. These cities drove a trade network Europe could now access directly. With spices transported by sea, the global flow of wealth diverted from the Silk Road to the open ocean. By establishing this single, direct connection, Gama created a blueprint for an ocean-based economy, where goods move across the planet via maritime hubs rather than landlocked empires. By 1499, the map of the world had changed. Humanity was no longer a series of isolated pockets, but a single, interconnected web of trade. Vasco da Gama is remembered not because he discovered a new land, but because he endured a year of starvation and disease to physically link two halves of the human story. His voyage demonstrates that the most significant changes in history are often won by the endurance of those who refuse to turn back from the void.